Welcome everybody back.
Ich möchte alle wieder begrüßen.
This is our fourth and final presentation for this camp meeting.
Das ist jetzt unsere vierte und letzte Präsentation für dieses Camp-Meeting.
I normally have a new whiteboard, but I'm going to continue with this one. Let's begin with a word of prayer. Lord, we want to thank you that not only we can learn, that we can wrestle with one another and with you, but that we can have joy and pleasure in that exercise. May you guide us through this study. We ask in Jesus' name. Amen. In our previous study, we were looking at two questions or two issues. The death and resurrection of an entity and who the King of the North is. And when we ask the question of who dies and resurrects, when we brainstormed that, we had three answers. King of the North, the beast, and the relationship between church and state. When we delved a little bit deeper into that, can you just check we're not going too fast for other people? Just to make sure. We looked at the word beast, went to Revelation 17 and 13, and we saw the same word. So we know beast is the correct answer, or a correct answer. But when we looked a little bit deeper, we realized that there's a difference between the beast of 17 and 13. On Thursday, it was Thursday, we had this graphic on this board. And right here, we said that the beast of 13 equals the beast of 17. And now we're saying, despite what we said earlier, we really know that they're not equal. So we did a more detailed look at the two chapters. And we see in chapter 17, there's a beast and a woman. And it's that combination that is the same as the beast of 13. So if we were to go to this model, we have chapter 13, the beast, equals the beast and the woman of 17. That's what we have there. This is the sea beast. So if we want to use language that we're familiar with, we'd call this church and we'd call this state. Church-state relationship. And we are suggesting that in chapter 13, that also shows a church-state relationship. Everybody okay with that summary so far? Does anybody disagree with that? So, I can't ask you questions. But you do understand. Okay. Now, okay, good. I like that. So, we spent quite a lot of time looking at Daniel 2. I'd say as an approximation, because Daniel 2 can be used as a second witness to show the correctness of the relationship between 13 and 17. If that's too long, tell me. So we can use Daniel 2 as a proxy or as a second witness. I'm not saying it is a pure second witness. To show that it has similar properties to Revelation 13 and 17. If we compare and contrast the two, the beast of 13, which is church and state, in Daniel 2, that would be the legs of iron. The pagan Roman state, and depending on how you want to explain it, pagan religion. The pantheon. Then when you go to Revelation 17, you have church and state there, but they're separate. The symbols are separate now. A woman and a beast. And if you go to Daniel 2, the equivalent of that would be the feet of iron and clay. So does anybody have any questions on that, or if we're okay? So if that's the case, when we say, or whoever said, the death and resurrection of the beast, were they talking about Revelation 17 or Revelation 13? Because they're different. Revelation 17, the beast is just this state element. So is that what dies and resurrects? Or this beast? State and church. Is it this that dies and resurrects? And if this is the first time you're hearing this, you might think that they're so similar that it doesn't make any difference. But my response to that would be all the clever people here at camp would say, no, it is a big difference. The reason everyone's laughing is because Jermaine said not to ask her questions, and now she's asking. That's why they're all laughing. Go ahead.
Donc, ah ouais, in English? Ouais. You said you separate the beast from the woman. So in the board, we said 13 equal 17. And now in 17, and Parminder, he separates the beast from the woman. Because he want to focus on the beast. So why are you doing that? Because we put the sign equal. So is it possible to dissociate them, beast and woman? Because it's not the same entity?
When I asked the question that there's a death and resurrection, went to great controversy as an example of that. We have these ideas or these models. The easiest one to see is when you go back in history, the kingdom of Babylon lives in a city that's called Babylon. That when the next kingdom comes, Medo-Persia, they don't just destroy the nation of Babylon. They occupy their house, their city. So everything that Babylon had and was, Medo-Persia has and becomes. You agree with that? So another way to explain that literal history is that Babylon dies and it gets replaced literally with Medo-Persia. But what we would describe prophetically is that whatever Babylon was, conceptually, whatever it represented, that died and resurrected in and through Medo-Persia. Are you okay with that? So if we're okay with that, then we can be sure that the issue of death and resurrection is not just a concept that we made up from some random Bible verse. It's a significant issue in Bible prophecy. And therefore, we should understand what that means. In the past, we would say it's easy. One nation dies and another one replaces it. And this new nation or new kingdom that replaces the old isn't the birth of something, it's the resurrection of something. Okay with that?
Can we say the continuation of something?
We can say the continuation, but when we defined resurrection, we said it's the same thing, but it looks different. So we're okay with that? So that's number one. We haven't just made up this thing. It's important. And then because we talk about the King of the North all the time, we want to understand who that is. Because that's the story of Daniel 11, 40 to 45. And we need to be able to trace who that is. The reason why we need to do that today is because all of the models we had 30 years ago, Time of the End magazine, either that suggestion is going to be fulfilled in the future, simply put, the Pope is going to rise up and the Pope is going to instigate in some shape or fashion a Sunday law through some alliance with Protestantism. And if you're an Adventist, you can see that happening because the existing Pope, who's not fit for purpose, Sunday law purpose, is about to come off the scene. And he'll soon be replaced. So their hope has now been revived. Adventist hope can now be revived. Or we take our position that we see that time has run out, that when it speaks about this generation not passing away, we take that, if not exactly literally, but we take that seriously. We know that many members in this movement can't be replaced. We're getting old, and the re-education of a new generation is just too long, too difficult. Summary of all of that is we're in the history where we should expect the end to happen. Then we see, Adventists can see the same thing, that the movers and the shakers, the key people in the world, North Korea, China, and their leaders, and Russia and United States and their leaders, that those leaders, particularly United States and Russia, are so influential they're such cults of personality. They couldn't be replaced in order to bring about end-time prophecy. So the summary of all of that is we believe we're at the end of the world, that 40 and 41 are being fulfilled. And the problem is There's no Pope in that story. You can't see it anywhere. And unless you're going to create a conspiracy, the question is, who's the king of the north?
Alors, thank you for the explanation. Do you answer to my question?
Not yet.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
That was
Okay. It was good.
I wanted to make sure we understand why I've got 1 and 2 as so significant. They're much more significant than I suggested yesterday and I suggested earlier today. And what's your question?
Why do you separate the beast from the woman? Because you put right.
That's enough. I've got that.
Because you put equal.
So when we ask the question, who dies and who resurrects? The concept of death and resurrection is a biblical one. I went to Babylon, Media, Persia. But the place most people would go correctly, they type the word death and resurrection in the Bible. You wouldn't get an answer if you did that. So you'd have to look for synonyms. And if you did that, you'd find it in 17 and 13. And in those passages, you see that it's the beast that dies and resurrects. So the entity that dies and resurrects is the beast. We can proof text that. Are you okay with that? What we haven't asked is why people put the king of the north dies and resurrects. Or if it's the relationship that dies and resurrects. So that we're clear, when we say relationship, I'll put a star here because we're talking about this. That this relationship we're talking about is church and state. That's obvious, but I just want to make sure that we know that. So we looked at the beast, and we see that the beast in 17 and 13 are not the same. What we find is that in 17, the beast is only state. Agree with that? In 17, the beast is only state. If someone doesn't agree with it, we can go to the verses and prove it. Are you okay with that? Go to get your mic. Actually, no, we'll get someone else to do the mic. Someone else show us that the beast of 17 is only state. I'll do it in a paraphrased version without going to the verses, and someone can fill the verses in. There are kings who commit fornication with a woman. That's image 1. There's a beast that is being ridden by a woman. Image 2. A woman in a relationship with men and a woman riding beast. Those men are kings. King estate. So in 17, we have kings plus a woman. You agree with that? Someone can give me the verse for that. Shout it out. Verse 2. And then we've got a beast with woman. You agree with that? Verse 3. And you want to say verse 1? Everybody agree? 1 and 3? Beast and the woman. 1 and 3? 1 and 3. So all I've done is saying it's the same woman, and then kings must be beasts. So beast is state. You can do a more refined study, but that's a simple overview. Does that answer all your question or not, or only part of it?
I understand what we just done, but yes, but my question was why we separate them, because yeah, but I understand you separate them, two entities, but these two entities, in fact, it's like they are one, so that's why I don't really get, but we can continue and
In Daniel 2, is the gold two entities? Yes. Is it separated?
yes, can be fine.
Wait, say again.
Just answer my question.
Okay.
Is it all gold?
Yes,
Is it two entities?
one entities.
It's two entities,
Two.
state,
Two, but combined.
but the symbol isn't separate.
No.
The feet,
Two
two entities.
and combined.
And when you look at the symbol, how many symbols is it?
Two.
Two. So the feet is different to the clay, to the head. The feet is two symbols,
Ouais.
and the head is one symbol.
Ah ouais. Mm.
So they're different.
Mm.
In 13, it's only one thing. And in 17, it's two things. So the beast can't be the same thing. There's subtle differences. Did that answer your question yet? Okay, so she said yes. So that's why here we put approximately equal. And here we say exactly equal. Any other questions? Okay, so if that's the case, whoever said beast, which beast were they referring to? So before you, who said beast, by the way? So before you answer that question, or unless you want to answer it now, the options that we have, what are the two options? So The question is, beast resurrects. Is that a correct fact? What have I done wrong? Nowhere. Is it a fact that a beast resurrects? Yes. So I'm going to put a tick there, a big one, because that's a fact. So we'll put fact. And then we have a question. What's the question? Which beast? And we have in the answer two options. Option one is what? We won't use the chapter number. Option one. I don't want to use the chapter. Option one. Okay, so to try to keep the flow through, that's answer number two, state. Okay, so now you're going to know what answer number two is state. That's what that beast is. The other answer is are we okay with that? Everybody understands that. So this is where the problem gets complicated to know which is the correct answer. Because so I'm going to say this bit, or the logic or the defense. I'm just going to state it as a fact without defending it. The woman is church. Everybody agree with that? So when we go to Daniel 2 and we move down through history, things change. You get these deaths and resurrections. Or let's use the word transfer. So I'm going to say that some things change and some remain the same. Isn't that the definition of resurrection? Okay, so as I say, I'm just going to state things without defending them unless people give pushback. What changes is state. And what remains, when I say remains the same, is religion. I put church so you don't think I'm changing things. So that's Daniel 2. So if you go to Revelation 17, then you have, excuse my graphics, you have a beast with 7 heads. Sorry? Yeah. 7 heads. And the way we understand that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. is that 1 to 7 equals sequence. They're sequential. That means in history. So 1 to 7 are historical dispensations or phenomena. We can prove that with verse 8. The beast that was alive, is dead, shall resurrect. So that's verse 8. And you might say, well, that talks about the beast, not heads. You can prove that in different ways. But I'm going to go to verse 3 of chapter 13. Because then it says heads. And even though we had it right here, 13:3, and you let me put beast, and it says heads. Oops. That's not the only way to prove it, but I just did it that way. So the summary of that is that heads equal beast. And each head is different. And therefore the beast looks different. It's the same constant. But as it goes from the different heads, it resurrects or manifests in different ways. Curtis.
Revelation 17, in verse 8, it talks about the beast that was and is not, and then shall ascend. So that middle period, the beast is not. But in verse 10, when it's talking about the heads now, it's going to point out that that middle period is.
Yes.
And so my point is we're forced to separate the stories of the beast and the kings. Because my point is that the beast is dead when one of those kings is alive.
Yes.
So
Did I say anything wrong?
I don't think it's as straightforward as saying heads equals beast.
Yes.
So when you say equal over there, I think you have to put approximate again.
I agree with you, but I'm going to leave it there because if I put approximate, I'm going to have to explain it. Because the point of this conversation isn't that. The woman who rides this beast rides from head to head. And I'm suggesting that the imagery says that she remains the same. There are some subtleties to that. Tamina?
Up there you say the church, the religion remains. And then we said, but in the Daniel 2, in the feet, we suddenly have clay. And beforehand, we have a pagan religion. How would we explain that? The religion of Christ.
I'm not going to explain it. If we do, we're just going to go down the rabbit hole. It's explainable, I think. But what we'll do is if we start trying to explain it, we'll realize there's gaps in our knowledge base. And I'll take you down this interesting path. And we'll forget why we're even doing all of that. As a close approximation, I think this is correct. So, when we say which beast dies, it's the state. If you go for Revelation 17, it's the state that dies and resurrects. And the woman remains the constant. Because that's what the symbology of 17 shows. You have head 1 and head 2 and the same woman. All that she does is change her clothes. From iron clothes to clay ones. Charity?
So in the verses before 9,
What's the question?
so we have the woman riding on the beast.
What's the question?
That I want to ask the question.
Did you ask the question first? Natalie's smiling.
Can I explain it?
No.
It won't take long.
No. It's not to waste time. It's if you don't even know what the question is, preamble is irrelevant because you've got an agenda.
Is the beast okay.
When people do that, they've got an idea in their brain and they don't like what I just said. I know you say no. Did you just ask a question? You say, I'm confused what you just said. I'm confused what that verse means. I don't agree that what you said matches what the verse says. You can do any of those ones. I'll move on, unless you do it, and then you can come back when you've thought about it, or you can do it right now.
Are the 7 kings the beast? Okay. Are the 7 kings the 7 mountains as well?
Yes. I think yes.
So the woman is riding on the mountain.
It's a woman riding on 7 mountains. Yes. Kings, kingdoms, mountain. I say the same.
Church.
Can you repeat it?
So mountain is not church? I don't think so. No. I'm just giving my answer. Someone might disagree. Did you have problems with all my answers to your questions? So yes, you have problems with my answers, which is what I said before, which is why you couldn't ask the question. Okay. So the beast that dies, one of them is state. I think I've shown that. So that would be the 17 model. The church and state model, which is 13. So we say church and state dies. But I want to suggest that according to Revelation 17, the woman never dies. She doesn't die and resurrect. So when we go to the answer, we can't say that the church dies and the state dies. Can we say that the state dies? No. We can't say that the church dies. Because we know, according to Revelation 17, that the woman never dies. It's different heads, different states, same woman. That's what the symbol is. You agree with that?
The state don't die, you said.
The opposite.
And so what?
The woman does not die.
Yeah, but the
The
state,
states do. So if we have church and state option, because that's the beast, remember? This is the beast, isn't it? What are we going to define death to be? We'll go with this one first. If the beast is the state, what do we mean when it dies and resurrects? What's the death that we're identifying? Esther? Influence? Natalie? She said influence. She just said influence. Natalie? What dies? What does it mean the state dies?
Right. And the state dies, but that's not
Beast doesn't ride anything.
okay. Yeah, I don't
Debbie?
I don't know.
Does it lose power?
The state loses power. You had your hand up?
Territory.
The state loses territory. Curtis?
The state closes its bank account to the church.
Okay, so I don't have any problem with any of those answers. So my answer would be when the beast dies, which is the state dying, it doesn't cease to exist sometimes, but at other times it does cease to exist, like Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece. They actually cease to exist, especially the first two, depending on how you want to view what Greece is. But if we were to take a more holistic view, a view that covers all options, holistic, then the death of the beast or the death of the state is when the state says, I'm no longer going to work with the church. Separate from them.
Uh,
Not recorded.
I said, for example, USA is a glorious land. Six kingdom. Church and state separate.
Kind of. But the sixth kingdom never says I'm going to stop doing something. They just said, I'm never going to do anything. You agree with that? The death of the state means that they were doing something before and then they stop. Sorry? France. Okay. So what I just said is what Curtis said a minute ago. He just gave, it was more specific. The way Curtis, he said, the state says, I'm no longer going to financially or militarily support you. That's what I and several people have suggested that death means. If you go to literal Babylon, they got killed. State actually got killed. They didn't want to stop paying up or helping the church. They were forced to. But if we just take the general principle, without saying why, just what they do, no more financial or military support. Are we okay with that definition? So some of us are okay with that definition. I'll go. We've got. Just put your hands up. Is it 3 people? Okay. Tamina. Okay. So I want to understand what the death of the state beast is. That's the Revelation 17 model. And several people have said it's when the state no longer economically or militarily supports the church. And if we say, for whatever reason, it covers every situation. They don't like the church anymore, or they got killed. Either one. And Tamina disagrees with that, or?
What you just described. For me, the death of the relationship, not just the state.
Okay. Monica?
I understand it's the death of relationship.
No, I want an answer for the ones at the bottom. Tell me what the death of the state is. Unless that's what you're doing.
Yes. So either due to death or due to turning away of the man. Like the man turns away from the woman. Yeah.
So you're saying the same thing as Tamina?
Tamina.
Okay. Andres?
I think it's similar to Tamina as well. I wonder why it says like this, the beast dies and not that it just like throws off the women, for example. And then it would like, for the 7th, it would like come back to write it again or something.
I can't answer your question. You're supposed to answer. You're supposed to answer it.
What?
You're supposed to answer the question.
No, like to me, that is a proof that it's not, that the death of the way we define the death of the state is incorrect.
How do you find death?
I don't know.
Now, if you don't know, how can you say something's wrong? Or you can.
Because it doesn't fit with the verse.
What's the wrong version?
That the death of the beast equals the death of the relationship.
So you disagree with Tamina?
I thought I agreed with her.
She said the death of the state is the death of the relationship.
I thought that was what you said.
What is supporting this death of relationship?
I don't know what I said now.
So you said.
No, I remember what I said. I don't remember what I meant.
If we should get order in the conversation.
That's what you're saying.
What I'm saying is the death of the beast cannot be the state saying, I don't want to work with the woman.
Okay, if it doesn't mean that, you don't know what it does mean. Tell me why it can't mean that.
Because the parable would have been really easy to make the parable different, to better illustrate that.
Go from Babylon to Media Persia. What did the state do? The state of Babylon. At that inflection point.
It just kept going.
No, the inflection point is the war, the battle.
Between Babylon and Medo Persia? Or
between Babylon and Media Persia.
I'm not sure. Like it. What? I'm not sure.
It stops. helping the church. Because he got killed.
Okay.
So it says, I'm not going to help you anymore. You know that?
It stopped existing.
Yeah. But I'm not saying it stopped existing. I'm saying it says, I'm not going to help, or I'm stopping helping the church now.
Okay.
Without defining why.
Okay.
So if you know that, tell me what the issue is.
In
It's me, sorry.
So either you just continue your 5 minutes and give a 2 minute sum up, or
what do you do?
You go ahead and explain what you can't, what you haven't.
So because the beast only dies in the 6th kingdom. It doesn't say that it dies for Babylon. I'm gonna say in 17.
What does it mean to go from head 1 to 2?
von Kopf 1 auf Kopf 2 zu gehen.
Why not just stay on 1 forever?
Warum bleibst du denn nicht auf Kopf 1 für immer?
It's just a change, but it's not expressed as the beast dying. As like there's something unique about.
I'm not asking. Okay.
I mean, you can continue your
That-
conversation.
No, I keep forgetting. You translate what he said. Go repeat it, sorry.
So what I said is there's something unique about the 6th head, or yeah, the 5th dying, that it's not pointed out in the 1st head, even if it jumps to the other head.
I didn't ask you that. I said, why does it go from 1 to 2?
Because
you know the answer.
Because it started using another kingdom.
You know the answer because you go to history. Why'd you go from 1 to 2?
Because one ceases to exist and the other one comes up.
I didn't hear you.
And one ceases to exist and the other one is born.
So 1 said, I will no longer support the church. You said that was wrong.
Why did I say? No, I didn't say that was wrong. I said it was wrong for the 5th kingdom, but not for the first one.
So number 1, that head says, I'm not going to help you anymore. So it goes to number 2. And by the time you get from 4 to 5, 4 says, I'm not going to help you. So she goes to 5. 5 says, I'm not going to help you. And she goes where?
To 6.
She goes to number 6. And number 6 says?
It dies. So there's 2 things going on, like jumping from head to head. Sorry.
What does number 6 say to her?
Says, I'm not going to help you.
What did number 1 say at the beginning?
I'm going to help you.
At the end?
I'm not going to help you.
Number 5 said the same.
Yeah.
Number 6 said? At the beginning.
I think it says I'm going to help you.
So a lamb is going to help an evil religion. Separation of church and state. That's the definition of saying I'll help you.
No, not the lamb, the weird beast that looks like a lamb but speaks like a dragon.
It needs to translate what you just said.
I said not the lamb, but the weird beast that has horns like a lamb and speaks like a dragon.
Well, you describing 13, isn't that number 6?
I think it's both 6 and 7. I don't know.
It's at least 6.
Yeah.
And at the beginning, it said to the woman,
I'm going to help you.
helping you means having church and state connected. You know that.
Yeah.
But the definition is it's a lamb because it keeps them separate. Locally, that means I won't help you. So why do you keep on saying it does help?
Because it lets it ride it. Because it lets it ride it.
Wherever you might read the verse, you've got compelling evidence that it said no.
So what I'm saying is, like, I see two things. Like,
you don't see two things. You have compelling evidence that it said no. Do you agree with that?
on the one hand, yes.
On all hands, it said no.
Who said no? The sixth head or the beast?
Sixth head said no at the beginning.
No, I don't agree with that. Sorry.
Okay, so we disagree then.
Yeah.
On Revelation 13.
Yeah.
That the two horns means separation of church and state. Because that's what you've said.
I don't think that's what I said.
Okay.
But that's okay.
Leslie, did you have? Did someone else have? Yeah, I thought you had your hand up.
I did, but
I'm going to move on.
My comment.
We haven't managed to agree. Too late, Mr. What? Okay. So, when I said the death of the beast is only the states, we agreed with that. I think everybody agreed with that. And someone said that means relationship. And someone said no more money. And so the question is, what's the difference? Now, Blessing.
I think I now remember what I wanted to say. So I want to go back to the natural definition of death. So if someone dies, they are incapable of doing what they could do before. Regardless of the cause of death, they can't do it anymore. So I understand the death of the state would be the same. It can't do what it was doing before. For the purposes of that definition, how that happened is irrelevant. And of course, if a person is tied to another person, the consequence of their death is that their relationship doesn't exist anymore. But death is just, I'm not there anymore. I can't do what I used to do before. That's what I wanted to say.
Anybody want to make a comment?
I have a question of what you said. Do I understand correctly that you take the sixth head and it rejects the church? And because of that, you say it needs to be consistent with the other heads. And then you say, okay, Babylon at the end doesn't want to give money to the church any longer. Basically, you take the sixth head and you say,
stop you. Is this to do with this question? Or the tete-a-tete I had with Andreas? Which one?
yes.
Which one?
This.
I'd rather
conversation.
avoid that.
Okay.
Because that was just, I don't think it's going to be helpful for this. So what are you saying? Because before you said you disagree.
I think it's the relationship which dies.
Stop there. You disagree with what Blessing just said?
I think that works.
You think that's what he just said?
Got it.
Wait. So you're not sure of what he said, or you're not sure what you're saying?
I'm not sure what the difference between the difference between our comments is.
Are you sure what you're saying? You said I have to think again. So you're not sure what you're saying?
I know what I'm saying.
So you don't have to think again. What are you saying?
I think the relationship breaks. That dies.
And you're saying that's the same as what he said? Because when he said it, everybody said, amen. All saying the same thing. Group from there. So I'm asking what you're saying.
I agree. It's the same.
So what you said and what he said are the same thing.
There is, but I think for now, yes.
He should make you nervous because he's going to answer. I don't know. Pass the mic over. Once I get the answer, then I'll summarize.
No, it's not the same.
Now I'll summarize. So, people have said, what dies is the relationship. For a relationship to die, something happens between the two individuals. Yeah? We should, as we were advised to do, go to the natural. So if we think about relationships, if the relationship fractures, dies, breaks, but the entities remain alive, the relationship has died, but the two entities are still alive. So we'll go from the literal now to this parabolic model. The woman is alive, and I think someone said 538. Part that you said. Is Babylon still alive? So Babylon has died. That death, the inevitable result of that was the relationship no longer exists. But the marker is that the state died. Babylon died. That's when your partner dies and you can remarry. It's not the same as a divorce. I think that's why he's saying it's not the same. So what he's saying is it's the death of the state, not the death of the relationship. Okay, did I summarize that okay for you? Did I summarize it okay for you or not? Okay, and the group of people over here? It's interesting that he gave and they said people said, yeah, exactly what we were saying, and it turns out not exactly what he was saying. He said something, and people say, yep, that sounds exactly right. Because when people explain things, sometimes it's not, we don't hear actually what they're saying or don't understand what they're saying. I'm not saying that to criticize anybody. I'm saying without discourse and dialogue, it's really easy to come away from something and have a totally wrong understanding of what someone said. Monica.
I don't understand why the stop of support doesn't equal the end of relationship. In the same way, why the death of a partner doesn't equal the end of relationship.
I understand. Me too. Just summarize what your problem is, what your question is.
I think we all talk about the same thing. I don't provide logistics for you, money, etc. That's end of relationship.
Is there a material difference between death and divorce?
Yes. Relationship and no more money. That's two options. Death. Sorry.
Carry on.
Options of relationship broken and no more money when they are one thing.
Why is there no more money?
Because the relationship is broken. The man doesn't want to support her anymore.
That's your answer. So if that answer gets answered, if that premise gets answered in a way that you find it, in a way you find acceptable, it may help you. So your premises about the money is what? Repeat it.
I don't only specify it to money. It's support, wider support. So no more support, no more relationship.
Listen.
In this particular context, the no more money is because the partner is dead. A dead person can't give you anything. No, I'm just clarifying that the end of the end of the relationship in this context is a consequence of the death of the partner. So the partner is not divorcing the person. They're dying. That's what we're talking about, death.
Does that answer?
Yes.
To your satisfaction? You make it sound like that's a coup d'etat, like it's the same. No one's arguing that the result is the same. But if we have what's on your left, and I put won't, will not, I put the word will not, which is very different to cannot. Death is being marked as the term cannot, not will not. Because will not infers the state is still alive and well and refuses to help the church. You say, and I'm saying that's the point, and you're saying, what's the point? I say this with respectfully to Andreas. This is why we got into a head-to-head a minute ago about number 6. Because what's number 6 saying in this model? Will not cannot. And that's what we define as there not being a beast. Not being a state. America exists, but it's not a state. And it's not a beast.
France, these two options become one. Just put the Kant away.
You can't look at France, whoever said France. Because in that history, France becomes a different entity. Becomes the hammer in God's hand to destroy the state. It becomes a different thing. If you said okay, so I presume you make that means it makes sense to you if you said yes.
There is no more money. Could we just write there death?
That's what cannot means. Will not means alive, cannot means dead.
Confused was because I thought that on the top is death and it goes into these two options.
Anyone else? This is not as simple as it Blessing might make it appear. Because this issue is all about number 6. And how we define states. Babylon to Medo Persia is easy because Babylon actually literally gets killed. But the European nations never got killed. So they still existed. And that's the difference between when we say, what is the reason you can't? Because the states literally continue to exist and prosper. So when we say state, you can't just read country into that. It's when the country has gone into a certain mode or a certain way of thinking. So, I don't know, Spain says we will pay money. They don't just say, we're Spain and we're going to stop paying. We're going to separate. Because that would be a divorce and that would be what's on your left. We won't. Spain continues to live, exist, and prosper as a country, but not as a beast of Bible prophecy. Not as a state as it's defined there. It dies. Okay.
That is where my confusion was.
So hier laat meine Verwirrung.
Because for me, no more money means that the state doesn't want to give the money.
Denn kein Geld mehr heißt nicht,
In contrast to it, it can't.
Okay. Let's see if we can race through this. We've defined the bottom one. That it's can't and it's not won't. So it's the state that dies. So the other option is Revelation 13 model. The beast that dies. We already know it's church and state. So how would we explain that? Curtis.
Sorry, is this when talking about the lamb? Explain what specific.
Not the lamb. This is the first beast, the sea beast of Revelation 13. Verse 3 says something. Saw one of his heads, as it were, wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed.
I think it's also.
He's just going to try. He hasn't finished. Oh, you read it? Sorry.
I think it's also can't, because by the time you get to Napoleon, he's going to change the state fundamentally.
Let me stop you.
Yeah.
What dies in 13? Are you happy to say the beast dies in 13?
Yeah.
But the beast is church and state.
Ah, so that's your question.
Church and state is a fact. If you're okay with it, if I say it is church and state.
Yeah.
And you agree that it dies. So explain that. What's dying?
One of its heads.
So what does that mean? So are you saying the beast doesn't die? Or
a manifestation of the beast? Because that's what the heads are.
What is the beast?
State. And church combined.
Start again.
The beast is church plus state. The head, just church. I mean, just state. Because it's talking about different sequence. It's a sequence.
So you're saying that the beast is church and state, and what dies is the head. And the head is what?
State.
Only state.
Yes. No, it's not. It's not. I'm stuck.
Start again.
Okay. The beast is church and state. The heads are going to talk about church and state as well.
In 17, what's the head?
State.
In 13, what's the head?
Church and state. Because in 17.
Carry on with 13.
From which point?
Something's dying. Explain the story.
And so in 13, it's talking about church and state. And so that's dying. But what it's talking about, really, is what we've gone through about the support that the state gives to the church.
Finished?
Yeah.
So if I summarize, you're saying that the church and the state, which is the head, and the beast of 13, the head is the beast. It's a question because you didn't say that.
I don't know.
If I say it this way, the head is the beast at a certain time.
Fine. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Yeah.
So the head is the beast.
Yeah.
And when that beast is said to die, it's only the state part that's dying.
Yes.
How do you know that?
Because I can compare and contrast with 17.
Without that? Can you know that?
No. From just those words.
From chapter 13, can you know that it's only state that dies? As you're thinking, I'll rephrase it. When it says the beast dies, if the beast is half church and half state,
It's a wound. Okay, carry on.
it's death.
Yeah, fine.
Are you saying that half the beast dies and half remains alive? Or are you saying the relationship dies? And can you prove any of that from the passage?
No, I can't right now. Maybe next week.
Are you happy to say half the beast dies and half
Yeah.
remains alive?
Yes. But I can't prove it.
So that means the story of chapter 13 is redundant.
I'm going home. No, I'm joking.
Because you have to go to 17.
Yeah.
So therefore 13
Just
is redundant.
so what point is John making in 13? Is that your question?
It will be.
I shall fester on that question myself.
Anyone else? Blessing. Did everybody understand that little dialogue? Hopefully I summarized it. Hopefully I summarized it. Revelation 13, the beast is half church, half state. Half the beast dies. And you can't prove, Curtis couldn't prove that. You have to go to Revelation 17 to prove it. And therefore, what is the story that Revelation 13 is trying to teach? And he wasn't sure. That was the summary. Blessing.
So what I want to say is that the model we came up with in chapter 13 forces us to say what's dying there is church and state. So I think it's the death of the relationship. I'm not changing.
1 second.
Oh, right.
So Charity says you're changing. Blessing said no change. Because it's a different perspective. Carry on.
Yes, I guess I'm finished.
Okay.
You said what I was going to say
Oh.
to Jared.
So Blessing has said chapter 13. The simple answer is it's the relationship that dies. Not any individual element of it. And he didn't say this, the next bit. That it's not literally, because literally states die. But the theme that's being brought to view here is of a relationship that disintegrates, which is different to 17. Bertie said he wasn't sure in a generic sense. Lessing didn't mention it. But the reason why that becomes important is because we should all know this. The reason you've got that information at the beginning of the chapter is there to do what? It's there to tell you what happens in the rest of the chapter. Introduction, body, conclusion. I'll tell you about the subject. And then the reason you're doing that introduction is to explain the body. Which is the whole discussion of the lamb-like beast. Then you get some conclusion at the end. So that's why it becomes significant to know what that's talking about. Curtis, we've gone over time. Yeah.
I guess because the question started with me, I just want a bit of clarification.
Was meine Frage ist, Erklärung anbieten.
So the point in 13 is emphasizing this church-state relationship in an entity, in a kingdom, that the lamb is not going to emulate.
Copy.
That story at the beginning of 13 is bringing up a point to contrast it with what the lamb is going to do, where it separates church and state. Yes or no?
I'm just going to speak on Blessing's behalf. Yes, I think.
Yeah.
And then that second half of 13 is going to bring you back to that first bit, the dragon bit, or the image of the beast. So why is that fundamentally different to 17? I get they're different, but what is the
It's not
point?
fundamentally different.
Yeah. What's the
Just a different
perspective?
story.
Oh, sorry.
It's a different story.
Could you, in a sentence, tell me what the two stories are?
No, because we've already gone too far ahead too quickly.
Okay.
Then we're liable to make a mistake.
Mhm.
So we've run out of time. What's on the board now, that first bit where it says church and state 13. We haven't answered that. We haven't come to a conclusion of what that death means. In the 13 model, one idea is that it is the church or half the beast that dies. As per 17. Or that it's the relationship that dies. The reason you're forced to come to that second conclusion second option is that you can prove that the church never dies. So the only option that you have is it's the state that dies, which is the same as 17, or 13 is a different story. And that then becomes the story of a relationship. That's as far as we've got. I want to thank everybody who came and in person and online. To make you feel jealous, we'll answer that question off camera. And we'll meet all together next time. Let's close with prayer. Holy God, we thank you that things that we thought we could never understand in the multitude of counsel can become so clearer. Continue to work with us, in us, and through us. We ask in Jesus' name. And for his sake. Amen.